Throughout the ages, the primary purpose of art was to communicate, teach, and challenge the viewer. The age of the Renaissance emphasized the study of humanity through inspiration from classic Greek and Roman ideals of godlike beauty. Mannerism experimented with the perfection of classical art, but continued to communicate the social concerns of the time. Political and religious viewpoints were publicly debated with the Catholic Church through the art from the Reformation and the Baroque movements. The late Baroque and Rococo challenged against the grandeur of the aristocracy and celebrated the end of King Louis's reign in France. From the Age of Enlightenment through Romanticism and Realism, viewers were encouraged to reflect on the issues of the day. Social inequalities were explored through the Impressionism and Post-Impressionist movements. It is through Impressionism, Symbolism, and Art Nouveau that artists begin to give the viewer more opportunity to make their own meaning of the messages conveyed through art. Historically, art was used to explicitly communicate a clear ideal to the viewer, but as time progressed, artists challenged viewers to make their own meaning of the messages conveyed. By the 20th century, artists created an avant-garde movement to challenge viewers to consider the meaning of their subconscious. During the 1900s, surrealist artist René Magritte transformed art in order to communicate, teach, and challenge viewers to explore a reality that is not easily observable with the five senses. By the obsessive repetition of actions, Magritte provokes viewers to challenge their actual functioning of thought. Magritte challenged the viewer's understanding of everyday objects through the juxtaposition and repetition in order to teach and challenge viewers to transcend their knowledge of the phenomenal world. Surrealist artist René Magritte committed his life work to exploring and contrasting the typical unseen aspects of everyday objects in the world around him. The primary goal of Magritte was to challenge viewers to see the world in a way that they could not be normally seen. As a surrealist, Magritte proposed to express the actual functioning of thought. Through the duration of René Magritte's career, he demonstrated a level of boredom with the objects as they were around him, and he challenged his own perception of the world around him through his paintings. Fantasy had been replaced by the everyday, through juxtaposition. René Magritte was drawn to surrealism in order to transform and manipulate the familiar objects around him, as to evoke something else, something unfamiliar. Magritte not only juxtaposed everyday objects with other objects, he also contrasted objects with a painted canvas. The fact that the real objects are three-dimensional and have depth while a canvas is flat added to his exploration of contrast. It is through the juxtaposition of everyday objects that Magritte manipulated the viewer's perception of the world. It is through the contrast of seemingly mundane objects that allowed the exploration of deeper meaning. Magritte had tried to define, within the parameters of a single picture, the ambiguity which exists between a real object, one's mental image of it, and the painted representation. Throughout his career, Magritte continued to revisit the juxtaposition of fruit and art. He manipulated this theme through a variety of mediums, including paint, photography, and the mix of the two. In order to allow the viewer to really explore the meaning of the juxtaposition of everyday objects, René Magritte would look to recreate subverted versions of contrast in multiple forms with his paintings. The repetition and morphing of these contrasting everyday objects would allow a viewer to become comfortable with questioning alternate views of their world. He would continue to create multiple images of the same object in constant metamorphosis. As a surrealist artist, Magritte created multiple corrupted images in order to challenge his own, as well as the viewer's perception of the world. In order to share the phenomenon that René Magritte experienced by contrasting unlikely objects, he created replicated images through his effort to overthrow our sense of the familiar, to sabotage our habits, to put the real world on trial. It is the obsessive repetition of actions, or the accumulation of objects through the collector, that also functions as a defense against the inevitability of death. Magritte repeatedly mutated an object until it was completely exhausted or even decayed, thus forcing a viewer to consider the alternate purposes of mundane everyday items. Magritte's repetitive recreation of fruit and flowers represent the idea of perpetual mutation that is surrealism. By documenting multiple mutations of contrasting objects, Magritte further challenges viewers to question the obvious meaning of the conventional items. René Magritte chose common everyday objects, combined them in a way that they were not normally seen, and then manipulated the objects through a sequence of adaptations which included the creation of multiple images. To highlight the repetition of objects, Magritte communicated through multiple mediums in order to explore the transformative meaning of contrasting objects. Magritte's assorted methods of artistic expression mediums included photography and paint in one art piece. Multiple art mediums helped Magritte to explore various interpretations of the juxtaposed familiar objects in which he worked with. Magritte not only juxtaposed contrasting objects, he also juxtaposed contrasting mediums, and he's explored the negative rapport between the real object and the painted illusion. As his career progressed, Magritte contrasted real objects with art itself when he placed mundane objects painted upon canvases. Magritte himself had suggested the limits of pictorial representation in his painting Common Sense, in which still-life objects, instead of being painted on the canvas, are shown standing on top of a blank framed canvas which is lying on a table. In order to subvert the viewer's expectation of one medium used within a piece, by exposing viewers to multiple art forms, Magritte sought other combinations of objects that would produce the same poetic effect, to really challenge the viewer's preconceived ideas of the everyday world. It is through art that all people can be engaged and encouraged to participate in their communities. Regardless of education or socioeconomic background, all people can find a way to communicate through art. Throughout history, the purpose of art has always been to educate, communicate, and challenge the viewer. René Magritte wished to not only challenge his own observation of the world, he also wished to challenge the views and judgments of those who experienced his surrealist art creations. Magritte was also trying to challenge the perceptions and beliefs of the people who would witness his art. He took essentially mundane everyday items, combined them in a way that they would not normally be seen, and would repeatedly morph them until all possibilities were exhausted. By using multiple art mediums such as paint and photography, Magritte challenged his viewers to continue to explore the possibilities of mundane objects through juxtaposition, repetition, and multiple art mediums.